Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Mary Scott, and welcome to the Richness of Our Lives podcast, where we talk to mostly women. We could do with a few more guys, actually, but today is a very special day for me because this beautiful woman has interviewed me a couple of times on her podcast and led the way, if you like, and inspired me to get into doing some podcasting. And she's fascinating. She's fabulous. And I'd like to welcome KAKI to our podcast. Let me tell you, though, about her. Apart from being an awesome chick, she is the founder and creator of Cashflow Queen, and also founder and creator of KAKI Publishing House. And she calls herself a multi-passionate entrepreneur. And I agree with that statement, actually. And I will fess up before I say any more. I've known this gorgeous woman for quite a long time now. So I know some things that I might be able to pull out of a hat. Just kidding, really. But you know, when I first met her, she had come out of being a very successful pharmacist. I noticed she doesn't mention this on her bio, but I think it's a worthy thing to mention because it tells me she's quite smart. So you should heed that warning that she's a smart woman. But I love this. Do you know what her name means? Awesome and abundant energy flow. I really like that. And the year of the dragon, I would be remiss of me not to mention that and how awesome to have a name. I'm going to let her tell you some more about herself. But there's another line that she wrote in her bio that I really love. KAKI believes you can heal the world through love and wisdom shared in authentic storytelling. So let's tell a story here today, shall we? Welcome to you, gorgeous woman.
Thank you for having me on. I'm so honored. And I was listening to you and going, oh my gosh, she's going to make me cry again. Every time I'm on a podcast with Mary, I cry.
Well,
I'll try not to today.
I'll do my best not to go on those probing questions that has the leaking of the eyes. You know, you've been successful probably since day dot, really, haven't you? Would you say that?
I don't think so. I never really believed I was successful until I really found out what it was that I believe was success. So all this time up until a few years ago when I started doing all my personal development and, you know, getting my mind in check, it was always chasing things because there was always someone that had something more, or like, you know, my parent, I mean, I grew up Asian background, parents like, you need to, you know, be a doctor, you know, lawyer, whatever, to be successful. I mean, I'm a pharmacist, so, you know, that's kind of like a band below the doctor.
A peg down, oh my gosh.
A little bit down. Not quite a lawyer, you know, so yeah, I never really thought I was successful. But looking back now, I can see that I was, you know, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I remember when I met you in Sydney a long time ago, you struck me as a successful woman then. So, you know, isn't that funny? It must be about something about you, your posturing, just your aura. And I think that sends a very powerful message, doesn't it, to your audience? And you mentioned personal development, and you know that's what I love to talk about too. So what kicked it off for you? Why did you get into personal development?
I had a baby and then I had postnatal depression. So that's, yeah, I don't think I've talked to you about that before, but that's what kickstarted it. So when I had Evie, so I've got two little girls, so my oldest one's 9. So when I had her, you know, I when I left work, I was a chief pharmacist at the Children's Hospital here in Perth, Australia. And, you have a baby, and when you kind of have all your shit together, oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to. When you have your things together, when you have everything together at work and you have a baby, you don't realize like the big impact it has on you and how much confidence having a baby can rip away from you. So what happened was I had postnatal depression. I didn't know. I just felt sad all the time. And it was probably about a year and a half, 2 years later that I finally, I guess, admitted I knew in a way that I had it. But because I'm in healthcare and when I go see the child health nurses, I knew, what to answer. That, what, you can't make it like you're so perfect, but you can't make it that you're too depressed. So, you're kind of in the middle road kind of thing. And yeah, around 1.5, 2 years after I had Evie, that was when I finally went, okay, I'm crying every day. My husband didn't know what to do with me. I'm sad. I don't know why. At work, perfection, happy KAKI all the time, doing her work, going about her day. And so then I actually looked for help. And that was when the personal development started. The doctor suggested I go see a psychologist. And so I found a psychologist that was also a life coach. And at that time, for some reason, I felt nudged to try Reiki. And coming from a pharmacist background, energy was not something that I believed in. So Reiki was like, okay, we're trying this. But I had 2 people in a space of a week talk to me about it. So it was kind of like, oh, okay. Because it had popped into my head. And then I had 2 people confirm. So I went, okay, I'm just going to try this. So I found a lady that used to be a medical doctor who turned into a Reiki master. So that combined really sent me off to delve into personal development and also really understand that everything really is energy.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? You, the pharmacist, very left brain, get into Reiki, right brain, and then you meet a doctor who, you've got to say, you've got to be quite a bit left brain into Reiki. Like, what does that tell you about the changing world we're in? Energy and like back then, well, should I say, back in the 70s, 80s when I was doing my nursing, that was a bit like you wouldn't even talk about it. Like, it's a bit hocus pocus. I don't know what drug she's on, that kind of thing. And now it's so much every day caring and, nurturing ourselves, isn't it? It's all this energy. In fact, my observation is that the energy in the world at the moment is quite frenetic. It's going quite fast. You've got to be running to keep up. What's your feeling about it?
Oh, definitely. It's constantly running so fast, but not even being able to catch up. It's like, what is happening? And not just within my personal space, but just looking out as well with everything that's happening in the world is just sometimes it's like, well, what is going on? It is frantic. It is angry. It just feels like it's about to burst open.
That's true. And I imagine in some respects that's exactly what will happen. How it will happen, that's up to the universe. I feel like that's where we're heading. It's interesting you're talking about postnatal depression. What I have read over the years is that it can be quite shaming. It can be, just pull yourself together. You've got a beautiful little girl here, and Evie was a beautiful little girl. I remember that little girl picture I saw. And so did you come up against any of that, or was that plain sailing? That's not the word to use, is it? It wasn't plain sailing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
to
I know.
reach out and get help.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of shame. That's why I refused to accept it for so long. And even after I started getting help, my friends still didn't know about it. No one knew about it apart from my husband. And it took me a long time before I even told a friend. or my boss. 'Cause when I told my boss, and he's quite a close colleague of mine. He was just shocked because he just did not even have an inkling of me having it. But it got to the point where it was that bad that I had to tell people, and it was very hard to do that.
Absolutely. So you must be good at compartmentalizing.
Yes.
You popped it in a box before you went to work, did
Yeah.
you?
Yep.
Wow, that's quite an art.
It is quite
Something,
an art.
something
And
I teach. It's not easy.
yeah, and it is important that you can do that so it doesn't run your life. But at the same time, I really believe that you also need to look at your stuff as well. But being able to put it away for when you get home, you can drown in your sorrows. Um, but you need to get on with it, as much as I don't want to say that, but you do. Otherwise you just lie on the couch and do nothing and waste away.
Yeah, interesting. And dare I say it, it's one of my favorite saying, wasting away, and people, tiptoeing through life, hoping to safely make it to death. They're doing that all the time, aren't they?
Yeah.
Wasting away on the couch. Well, it's very interesting. You, as you said, you then went on to have another gorgeous little girl. And how did all that experience previously with Evie, how did that prepare you for the next little treasure in your life?
It was very different. I think even the birthing process was very different. With Evie, I had an emergency cesarean, and I was vomiting before, because the drugs were all kicking in, and everything was just going, and I was like rushed off um to the theater. And I remember when I was handed the baby. Actually, no, I wasn't even handed the baby because I was that out of it. It was when I went into recovery that, Terry, my husband, gave me Evie. And I was just like, oh yeah, there was no recognition of a bond there. I was just so out of it. But then when I got to Maddie, my second, I was able to hold her in theatre. It was a planned cesarean this time. Um, and I just felt all this love. So it was even just
Mm.
very different in terms of my mindset and my emotions, because I've worked on it throughout that time between Evie and Maddie, and continue obviously to keep working on myself.
It's interesting, isn't it? So what happened was there was an event created in your life, a kind of a wake up event, if that's a fair thing to say, for you to start to tap into mindset, personal development, Reiki, all those sorts of things. So imagine then people that have never tapped into personal development. What would you say to someone who's young, not into the married scene quite yet? What would you say to them about whether it's a good thing to start looking at themselves and,
Yeah.
digging a bit deeper about life?
Start as early as you can. Because our school system doesn't teach you about personal development. Just looking at the people that came into pharmacy after me, there's a lot of entitlement, fear of failure. I mean, I was that person as well, but it seems to be more prominent the younger they are. And it's this fear of failure that they're entitled without putting any effort. And when you do personal development, you have to understand that everything requires effort. As much as I love to meditate and wish all the people throw cash at me, it doesn't work that way, right?
Oh, really? Come on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. So I think the earlier you can get a young one to understand that we need to learn from our failures, and you don't fail unless you really do give up. And sometimes there are times when you do have to give up. I wouldn't say give up, let go. It's different to giving up because things are too hard, or oh, I failed, no, and now I'm going to get all into my stories. And I think having children as well, for me, being able to instill that to my daughters makes a big difference. We have, me and Evie, my younger one's too little, but we have big conversations around emotions and whether that she can or can't do something. She always says can't. I'm like, yet, at the yet. All these things where you're just instilling in them these principles that will help them later in life. And I really love it when sometimes she spits things back out at me and I'm like, oh, why did I teach you that?
That's right. It got you back when you weren't expecting
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
How cool is that? That's lovely, isn't it? A 9-year-old having those sort of conversations about emotions. And when you think about it, well, certainly, and let's face it, I'm not 21, I'm in my late 60s. But when I was growing up, oh my goodness, we didn't even talk about love, It would not be something my parents would say, like now you hear people say, love you, mommy. I was listening to some children the other day hanging off the staircase to their mother downstairs. We love mummy, we love mummy. And it was just gorgeous. The two little girls, actually, they're only young. And I was thinking that would never have happened back when I was growing up. And nor would that whole notion of, hey, there's more to life than this. And we have to look at ourselves and we have to dig a little bit deeper. Now, you like storytelling. I know that you do. Tell me about the most fascinating story about you. What would you like to tell us?
Oof. I don't know if it's fascinating, but I guess moving from being a pharmacist to what I do now, because gosh, I never would have ever imagined that I'll be doing the things that I do now. So when I had when I had Maddie, I wasn't chief pharmacist at that point, but I was a manager of one of the departments in the hospital pharmacy. And I remember on the last day when, I was having all the celebrations and one of my colleagues made me a beautiful cake, that I just had this inkling I was not going to go back to pharmacy. And I had no idea how, right? Because from when I had my first to between my first and my second, it's a space of 4 years, but 2 years of it was in that postnatal depression, and 2 years of it was then seeking for something that would, because I started questioning, why am I in pharmacy? Where is it taking me? What am I here to do? All those existential questions that you start getting when you start getting into personal development. And so I was seeking, but I haven't found the vehicle. And I just was going, okay, right, I'm getting this weird message.
Weird
Message that I won't be going back to pharmacy. Yeah. Like, how is that even going to happen? I mean, I've always loved investing. Investing is something that my dad instilled into me since young. I started share trading at 18 because he's always said to me, working in a job is never going to make you rich and wealthy, and you'll never be able to be set for life, as as people call it. So I was like, okay, but I don't think I was ready for it. And also my dad was self-taught, so it's a bit like gambling a little bit. Anyway. So when I had Maddie, I remember the first day of maternity leave, A-type personality, overachiever here, just letting you know. I went, I'm going to start this share trading course that I bought about a year ago, first day of maternity leave. And so I did. I started doing this share trading course that I bought. When I was in hospital, just had Maddie, calling my coach in the hospital, and he's like, where are you? Why is it, he was going, it sounds fun, like, it sounded different to where I usually, and he's like, oh, I just had a baby. And he's like, why are you calling me? I'm like, oh, baby's sleeping, there's nothing to do. So it was from that point on that I started doing that type of share trading. And I went, okay, so then I started going, oh, I'm making more than my job. I was going, okay, this is
Hell
fun.
yeah.
This is fun. And I said to my husband, okay, if I can make more than my job for the next 6 months, then I'm not going back to work. And I did. So I didn't go back to work.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Trusting your intuition paid off. Oh, and a bit of a prod from your father, but that was a little bit earlier.
Yeah. And during the 6 months, I also had the calling to become a life coach. So I went, okay, I'll go and do a life coaching certificate. And this is like my little one's like 6 months old. Sometimes I question my life choices, but it somehow has all worked out. But I was okay. So I did a life coaching certificate. Then I, kind of went into this quantum healing, like all the energy certificate. It was like I was being led away from healthcare without me trying. So I think that was the most fascinating thing for me. And then also during that time, starting my podcast as well, it was like one thing after another was just showing up and being put in front of me. And it was, well, obviously it was up to me whether I take it or not. But I went, okay, well, must be coming for reasons. I just kept going, and here I am now. Started my own publishing company. I'm teaching people how to share trade. And yeah.
That is so fabulous. And, when I'm working with my clients, they quite often ask, how do I do that? How? Sometimes in relation to talking about goals, but I say, hey, listen, just focus. Go straight ahead, eyes straight ahead. Don't go distracting, and the how will take care of itself. And you've clearly demonstrated that by that story, and thank you. And when did you write? You're a 4-time bestseller international author. When did you write your first book?
It was 2021. Yeah, so from my podcast, I interviewed a publisher, and I remember it was the end of the year. And that whole year, from the beginning of the year, I usually, do a bit of a tune in to see, what I'm supposed to do. And I kept getting right, because I love writing. And I'm like, I don't have time to write. So I did not write at all. I did not go back to writing. It was kind of like going back to blogging or whatever it was that I was meant to do. And then I met this publisher, and I kid you not, the next day she emailed me and said, oh, I'm still buzzing from our podcast. It was one of my favorite podcasts. I'd love to invite you to be part of this multi-author book. And I'm going, I don't even know what this is. And full body tingles. I said yes. And that set me off writing books. And then from that, becoming a publisher, because I just love sharing stories so much.
That's fabulous. And it's interesting. I'm reflecting as you're speaking, becoming a share trader, becoming an author, publishing house. How much has your mindset impacted? Because it's quite disciplined what you've done. Just in case you've forgotten, it's quite a disciplined approach that you have. High achiever, that tells me discipline. So how much has your mindset impacted that journey that we've just spoken of?
A lot. It is mostly mindset and energy, and very little, not little action, but in terms of strategy. Because what I've found out for myself anyway is that I can plan till the cows come home. I can plan every single step that I'm going to take, but plans never go to plan. No matter how good your plan is, there's something in there that's not going to be how you want it. So for me, as someone that was very like structured, I liked everything, nice.
In its place.
In its place. It was a hard thing for me to learn to do. But as I learned it, I realized very quickly that it helps me get a lot more done. And it also impacts me less emotionally, because I'm not so set in my ways that this has to be done here, then whatever. It just happens. You know, people always ask me, how do you have two kids, your husband works away, and you're doing all this? And I really, and I'm not joking. I'm not saying this because I don't want to be humble. And I'm like, I don't know. It somehow all happens. And it really, it truly is. It somehow just happens and flows. There is no structure, there is no plans. It just happens. I don't even know how to explain it to people when they ask me, because that's just really the reality of it all.
Yeah, it's interesting you say it just happens. And once again, because, I like to turn over the next stone and see what's under it. But I was thinking, is it about flow? Is it about passion? Is it about purpose? Is it the ducks lined up? And you just merely got in that, and the flow just happened. Well, did it really? I mean, the other word that keeps popping up is resilience. I mean, have you learned anything about resilience? Because that seems to tie in with people that stay the course. And you strike me as someone that stays the course. What would you say about that whole journey of resilience? What does it teach us? And have you got experience of being resilient?
Yeah.
That was a mouthful, wasn't it? Sorry.
I definitely think that to be successful, you need to have the resilience, because you're going to be taken down. It is hard. I'm not going to lie. Being an entrepreneur, working for yourself is not easy. It's not for everyone. And it's very easy to give up. Very easy. I could just go back to my job and make a stable income. Whereas as an entrepreneur, your income can fluctuate month to month, day to day. So really, it is a matter of having that resilience. But how do you build that resilience? Well, it needs to be something that you actually want to do. Because if you don't want to do it, what is the point? And you also have to have the why you're doing it. That's, for me, having the why and actually the drive, the passion from within is really important for resilience, because you won't be resilient and keep going if you don't have those two things.
I agree. Yes, yeah, perfectly said.
Mm.
I do a lot of talking about how hungry are you? And because sometimes it's been my observation that it's not always about skills. It's about your hunger. What would you say about that for yourself?
I think, well, definitely have to have both. Because if you have the hunger but not the skills, you're also not really going to get anywhere, but you build the skills as you go. So you have to have the hunger first, I guess, to then, if you need to, build the skills. You can't have the skills but have no hunger, because then you're not really doing anything. So
That's right. And I imagine, and this is true from what I've seen, it's easier to teach people skills than instill hunger in them.
yes, definitely. Yeah,
Isn't that an interesting thing?
it is very much so. Funnily enough, I did a Facebook post around, people always say they want financial freedom. You hear that term thrown around, so much.
Yeah.
And people don't have the hunger to actually go and find financial freedom or create financial freedom. Yeah,
What
because you
does
can
that
build the
look like?
skills.
Oh, sorry, beg your
Oh,
pardon.
sorry.
No, you can build the skills. Go on.
Yeah, so you can, if you have the hunger, then you're going to look for something to then build the skills, which will then help you create financial freedom, whatever that means to you.
Well, that was going to be my question, what does it actually mean? And you're right, it's everywhere. Social media, financial freedom. And, I don't always get people's essence when they're talking about it, but you can speak obviously for yourself, but generally speaking, what do you think it means? Is it a fantasy for most people? Why do we say it so often?
I think for most people, it is a fantasy. it sounds really bad because they're not going to do anything about it. So it's always a dream that will never actually happen. But for other people who have the hunger, I'm just going to keep using that term now. It's well, it is something that's obtainable, but it's then also getting very clear with what financial freedom means for you, because my definition is going to be different to you and even different to my husband. And, everyone's going to have a different definition. Some people's, some people might go, I want $1 million, and that's financial freedom. Okay. But also, you need to get clear of why you want $1 million, because if you have $1 million and you're not clear, you're just going to spend it, and then you don't have your financial freedom again, right? So it's this hamster
Chicken and egg.
wheel.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, so I really believe you need to get clear on what you want, why you want it, and then you can go, okay, well, this is why I want it. Okay, this is what financial freedom looks for me. I think, people always think, oh, financial freedom is sipping cocktails on a tropical island. But I'm very sure that you will get bored very quickly if you're doing it every single day. When you have no purpose in life, you're really, again, wasting away when you have no purpose, no passion. So it's like, oh yeah, you're just brain dead if you're drinking cocktails and sitting there at a tropical island all day. That's what I think anyway. You don't have to be making big impacts in the world, but having a purpose to serve, to help your community or look after your family, whatever it is. Financial freedom might be that I don't want to work anymore so I can be with my kids. That could be financial freedom. And that's enough, is knowing that enoughness, because people are always chasing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
We could certainly celebrate our wins more, couldn't we? Exactly.
Definitely.
What you're saying. We get it and then we keep going. And it's interesting. As soon as you said that about an island sipping cocktails, I was thinking, I think that's true. I've heard people say that often, but that would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
If I didn't have meaningful conversations or, a book to write, I'm just going to throw that out there, something like that, then there'd be no purpose for me to sit on an island. I was going to say, in a dinghy without a rudder or something, because that's what it'd be like, just floating around in nothingness, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
How important is purpose for you?
Well, it drives everything that I do. So it's very important on the list. Yeah, because if you don't have a purpose, then why are you doing everything? It's not your purpose, so why are you doing it? Most people don't have a purpose in life. Most people, go to work, come home. Maybe their purpose would be to get a paycheck to fund whatever they want to do. And a lot of times they fund the things that other people think they should do.
Beautifully said. Yes, that's right. That's right. And purpose is interesting is what I'm trying to say. I was thinking about purpose and values, and I was thinking that values underpin certainly my purpose and where it takes me. But do you think that it's just too hard to think about what am I here for? What am I actually on the planet for?
Yeah.
Or is it that people are not informed? Why do you think people don't have purpose?
I don't think we are taught from young to follow our dreams. I think that gets quashed quite quickly. And then I think people then get disillusioned. So it's like, well, what's the point? I'm just here. Everyone else is doing this, so I might as well follow the herd. So then it's that, well, then they don't find their purpose until something happens in their life, usually, and they wake up and go, oh, I'm talking about me. Yeah. It is it's so cliche and typical, but I grew up, go to uni, get a good job, have children, buy a house, work until you retire, and then that's life. That's what we're taught. And it wasn't until I had my postnatal depression that I started questioning, is this all there is to life? And until you really start thinking about it and actually willing to go down to look at the answer, look for the answer, then you're not going to find your purpose, and you're just going to keep going, because that's just what we're taught that our purpose is just to just keep going with life. And you get born, you do all these things, follow the formula, and then you die. That's it. Yeah.
I think that's right. I know that I annoy my friends because I always want to dig that little bit deeper. And it's certainly been my observation, and it probably sounds a bit harsh, but most people are asleep. Not many of us are awake. And I imagine also that the awake people are in the minority. Do you have thoughts about that, reflections about that?
I totally agree with that. And there are the asleep people, there are the semi-asleep people, and then there's the semi-awake people, and then there's awake people.
Gee, that's it. That really cuts it down. Beautiful. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's people that do personal development, quote unquote. They read all the books, they take all the courses, but they actually don't embody it. They don't actually do, they don't make it a habit or everyday thing. They go, I know it. I have friends like that, oh, I know that. Okay. But then you observe them and then doing nothing of what they know.
What's that? One of my favorite sayings: to know a thing and not to do is not to know. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Don't really know it. And I guess it's because books, audio books are so accessible, and people read them. And can you read, like a robotic action?
Yes.
I'm reading, and I read this book, and then I pick up this book, and I don't ever take action on that first book. So I don't ever integrate the information, and then I don't actually embody it, which is, it's just such a shame if, I think that's happening, and that is a deep concern to me, because when you think about the knowledge, I mean, you're the one with the publishing house, sharing knowledge, is powerful and so enriching. But if your audience are not taking that up and taking action, let's face it, it's very hard to take action, because we can think about it, we can fantasize about it, but to actually take the action requires us to get involved and to put our best foot forward. Is that not true? What do you think about all this?
Definitely very true. Most people, speaking from experience, we're scared of failure, very scared. Fear of rejection, fear of what other people think. So then that's why, even though you might read all these things, you don't take action, because all the other stories are going on in your head to stop you from doing it. Because well, if I just keep going with what I do now, then no, everything's good, is the status quo.
Well, that's right. Until I'm uncomfortable or made uncomfortable, or someone pushes me right out of my comfort zone, it's a little bit hard to have a deep appreciation of anything, really, let alone someone's sharing of knowledge that we go, wow. I've been reading some amazing books lately. I read that paragraph and I have to read it again, because I need to stay present to actually absorb it. And it's taken me ages to read. But I have this thirst to understand more than I've ever in my entire life. And with teaching people how to trade, how do you balance that? Because there's skills, but my goodness, there's a powerful underpinning thing called mindset, positive thinking, if you like, and staying here, because you have to stay here, otherwise you make some erratic decisions, and I'm thinking you could go down the tubes very quickly. So how do you teach people this?
Yeah. So when I did my program, that I learned this particular share trading strategy, and then I've done another program. What I found is they teach you the strategy, and then they're like, you need to work on your mindset. And I'm going, right, how do I do that? But they don't talk to you about that. So so for me, I thought, okay, after like my trading experience, I can see how your mindset, your energy can affect your trading. So I actually teach people the strategy, but I also bring in the mindset and the energy work into it as well, because that is the big part of success for share trading. Because when you think about it, every single person that goes to, look at a chart, they get the same information. Everyone. You have the
That's
stock
right.
prices, it's shown to you every single day, is right there. How come some people make so much money and other people lose? Right? Yes, there is that element of knowing what you're doing, but then a big part of it is your mindset and your energy.
What's that saying? What you think about, you bring about. That's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yes.
Wow. So interesting. Share trading, publishing house. What does the future look like for you?
Well, I don't know. I just follow the nudges now. Lately, there's been a couple more things that have been kind of floating around that doesn't want to go away. One of them being property, getting back into property. My husband and I were investing in property for quite a while, but we sold everything during the pandemic. And yeah, so back into the property game, and actually, I went to a 3-day property boot camp on the weekend. So it was very intense. It was like 9 o'clock to like 7 o'clock for 3 days. And, one of the things as I was sitting there was, oh, I'm teaching share trading and wealth, right? Wealth for women, wealth, for people that want to be in my circle. And I was like, oh, I can use this to create wealth, like, with property. How can I use that to benefit everyone, that everyone can get a share? So that was something that has popped into my head, and it's kind of like stewing. And the other thing is personalized children's books, but really focusing on the roots, their culture. Because, for example, for me, I'm from Hong Kong originally, but I came here when I was 6. And we celebrate, Chinese New Year. We've got all these different festivals. And to be honest, I don't know what half of them means, really. Like, Mid-Autumn Festival, what does it mean? I'm like, oh, we have mooncake. But I'm sure there's a story behind why we celebrate it. And I want to have that knowledge for my children, and I'm sure, for their children. So those are the things that are been swimming in my head for a while. Probably there's more, but they're the two main things that have been popping up. So don't know it will happen, but yeah, watch this space.
Well, you are an entrepreneur after all, so that makes sense that you would have plans. And I love the way you say that it's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Do you think it can be that simple?
It is that simple. That's how my publishing house started. It wasn't because I was like, oh, I want to start a publishing house. It was more like, oh, this book title kept coming, and I'm like, no, not doing it. And then when I finally said yes, after about 3 months of this book title hitting me, okay, you need to do this. Then it was like, it needs to come from your own publishing house. I'm like, all right, cool, we're starting a publishing house. And really that's why and how it started. There was no planning. There was no, oh, that person has a publishing house. That looks pretty good. I'm going to do one too. It was nothing like that.
It sounds like it's pretty innate in you, you know, it's very intrinsic in you and about who you are to just go, this is what's needed, this is what I'll create. It's interesting you talk about your family and historic things. So how important is community for you? Because you're creating quite a few communities, aren't you, with your trading and also your publishing house? I'm sure there's communities. So how important is it for you?
Community is everything. You know what that phrase was, it your net worth, your network is your net worth. And I'm not saying that relationships are transactional, but it is very enriching when you have communities, people that support you and you can support, because it's very lonely being an entrepreneur at home doing things by yourself. It does get lonely, and having community to, you know, just a like-minded community to surround yourself in, to learn from each other, to support each other, to love each other. It is one of the most important things, not just in business, but in life, to have that community. Because gosh, yeah, I don't know what life would be like if you were, I mean, think of it, if you were the only person on the island and you have everything, you know, you have the big house, you're sipping cocktails and you're the only person. How boring would it be?
That's right. We're back to cocktails again.
I know. Sorry, I must need a cocktail or something.
I must. We'll have to meet up and have one day and talk about this.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying about loving, supportive community. They all go together. And I think that's a good place to end this conversation today. You're a delight. You really are. You're a breath of fresh air, and I love the difference that you're making out there. And thank you for giving up your time. I know you're one busy woman, and give those two little girls a big hug. And I know you're quite a team, you and your husband. I know I haven't met your husband, but I can see that you're very connected and like-minded, and that's beautiful. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a real treat for me.
Oh, thank you, Mary. I'll always make time for you. Thank you.
It's lovely. You have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This week's episode has come to an end, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved.